Hi everyone, and a very warm welcome to another Fronius webinar. Today's webinar is named Connected for Success, why every Fronius inverter should be online. The idea was that in all our inverters, they can be brought online. It's still an option and not a must do. However, we certainly recommend it to bring all Fronius products online. And this has good reason. Only if the products are online, service is easier for you, and it also brings a lot of advantages to the system owners. However, also in our trainings or when I talk to the colleagues from tech support, then I sometimes hear of customers that are very data sensitive and very sensitive to the subject of sharing data with someone. And there are not just a few that totally do not want any data to be shared. And this webinar should show how you can convince those customers to bring the data online and why those customers do not need to be afraid of doing so. My name is Max. I'm part of the Fronius trainer team, and I not only do face-to-face trainings here in Wels in Upper Austria, I also do webinars such as this or online trainings. In webinars, we are always two trainers. By my side, there is Anthony. Tony will take care of your questions in the chat. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them, and Tony will answer them while I'm speaking. What is the plan for this webinar? In total, there are 4 points I want to go through with you. First of all, we will discuss the main advantages of an internet connection. We will do this of this perspective of the installer and also out of the perspective of system owners. Then we will get to arguments how to convince conscious customers. So not just only the possibilities that there are, but also how to convince the data is secure with Fronius. And the second part of this webinar will be some additional points that are also worth mentioning. First of all, we will go through what you can do if you encounter internet problems. Who hasn't dealt with it, are a very common thing. And I will go through with you some options you can take and probably that solve your internet problems. And last but not least, I will show you what to do if you want to switch from Wi-Fi to LAN connection. In Austria, there's a saying, a cable is a cable, and it means a cable is always better than a Wi-Fi connection. So if you have the chance, please do so. Connect your products, your Gen 24, with internet cable and not via Wi-Fi. And we will take a look what settings have to be done on the inverter. All right. Let's start with the advantages from an installer's perspective. So why should end customers bring their products online? First of all, you can give fast and competent assistance if you have online access. Only if you have the Gen 24 or the inverter in Solar.web, then you have the data on production and consumption, and you can see whether there's something going wrong. For example, you can compare different systems. If you have systems in the same neighborhood, then which are similar, and one has more production than the other, then you probably know that there's something going wrong. Also, if the products are online, you receive service messages in Solar.web. You receive the error messages, also the error code that you can communicate then to our tech support. So you get all this data only if the product is online. If they are not online, then you have to go to the customer site. You have to connect to the inverter, and all of that causes travel costs. And those travel costs bother you, and in the end, also the end customers. And then also a point that you mustn't forget is upselling. So only if you have production and consumption data, you can give valid advice on buying an own pilot, for example, or a watt pilot. If you see that a customer has not a lot of self-consumption and a lot of energy is fed into public grid, then you can advise him to, I don't know, do some energy management, get some loads from night into the day, get an electric vehicle, exchange the existing heating system to a heat pump so that more consumption, more electricity consumption is done. Regarding upselling, I want to show you an example. You see here the consumption of a PV system. This PV system is the PV system of my parents' house. And my parents, they got a PV system a couple of weeks ago. And you can see the colors you're used to. So green is the battery. You see the green line. This is the state of charge of the battery. And in blue, you see the consumption. And obviously, the consumption is, I would say, on a similar level the whole day. And between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m., there's a peak. And if you take a second look, then you see that this consumption is around 11 kilowatt. And this looks like that this customer has an electric vehicle, and this electric vehicle is charging in those 2 hours. And suddenly there is a lot of consumption that cannot be satisfied with energy that is coming from the PV system, but which has to be taken out of public grid. And in that case, if you have this consumption data, you could go to the customer, could show him, and could tell him that probably it's a good idea to get a watt pilot and use the eco mode on the watt pilot and to charge the electric vehicle with a smaller amount of kilowatt, but over a larger period of time. In my case, this data signalizes that I should come home by time and should advise my parents on using the eco mode on the watt pilot. What else could you see? If there is no battery, for example, then it's even easier. You could show there's a lot of consumption into the grid. I don't know what it is like in your countries, but in Austria, you do not receive a lot of money for feeding in. So then you can argue very well that a battery is a good idea. Also, now is October is a time where the battery usually is fully charged and discharged. If you realize the battery is fully charged in the morning, but already discharged at noon, then probably the battery is too small. Again, you can show this to the customer and can advise him on getting some more modules, or let's say a second battery tower. And in the end, getting this data to the installer is also an advantage from the owner's perspective. Those arguments, they're very similar to the ones we had before, but just out of another perspective. End customers can get help easily because you can jump into their system in your office. You don't have to go to them. This also results in low costs for this initial analysis. Only one travel is necessary and probably not a couple. And in the end customers can also optimize their consumption if they have the data, only if they know what the production is like and what they consume when they can optimize their self-consumption. Secondly, how to convince cautious customers. I said in the beginning, we realized that there are a lot of people are very sensitive for the data, and that's totally understandable. I think it's up to us and up to you installers to give good arguments why they shouldn't be afraid of sharing the data. And on the one hand, we have these advantages. So why is it good for you? And on the other hand, you can also bring arguments why they shouldn't be afraid of sharing the data. Because we at Fronius, we are very careful what we do with it, and we're not doing any mischief. So what arguments can you bring? First of all, you can say to the system owners, you have at any point of time, you have control of the permissions. You see who has access to your system. There are 3 system rights: guest right, system administrator, and owner rights. And the right of highest quality is owner, then follows system administrator, and then guest. And permissions can only be given from higher quality to lower quality. So an owner can give system administrator rights and guest rights, and the system administrator can only give guest rights. And at any point of time, the owner sees in Solar.web, in settings, sees which email address has what rights. So here in this case, you see there are 3 rights given, 2 supervisors and 1 guest. Viewable at any time, and the owner at any time can also decide to withdraw these permissions and to limit access to his system. Secondly, if someone takes control of the inverter remotely, so if someone uses remote config, then the system owner gets a system message. And with this system message, he knows when has taken access place. So to receive a service message, you see it here on the screenshot. In this case, on the 7th of October at 9:26, someone has started remote configuration. What is important to mention, there is no log file, so there is no system message what has been changed. So there is no message like battery management has been changed and now battery is charging from 9 to 11. This is not the case. It is only stated that remote configuration has started. And also be very transparent about the opt-out option. The system owner can choose. When connecting to the inverter and going to communication in Solar.web, there is this setting that can be switched on, allow configuration of the inverter via Solar.web. And only if the setting is activated, then remote config is possible. System owner can choose not to allow that, and then this setting has to be switched off. However, inform him if you're doing that, that's totally fine. But then large service costs will arise because I, as an installer, I do not have access to your system, and for every error code, for every setting, I have to come to you, to your site, to your house, and this will result in higher costs. If the end customer is fine with it, good for us. However, we certainly recommend to allow configuration. So also tell him that the recommendation of you as an installer and from us, from Fronius, is to allow remote config. And last but not least, data protection is a very sensitive topic and is very important to us. We at Fronius, we have all our data locations, all our servers within Europe. So there's no data somewhere in the US desert and neither in Chinese desert. All of the data is stored here on this continent. And secondly, we are separating customer data and system data. So in case of a cyber attack, it is more difficult to get all of this data. So we are thinking a lot about data security. Fronius is taking care of it. And just the fact that Fronius is located here in Austria and that it is an European and Austrian manufacturer is a big plus when it is about data protection. Let's say you have convinced your customer, he's sharing the data, you have access to it, perfect. But then another problem comes up, there's no internet connection. Who hasn't dealt with internet connection problems? I think every one of us. Yeah, there are a couple of things that might help, and I want to go through with you through those options. First of all, what are the key parameters that define the internet connection quality? First of all, it is the distance. So the distance between the Wi-Fi router and between the end device, so a smartphone, or in our case, the inverter. The larger the distance, usually the smaller the signal, or the worse the quality of the signal. And system gets the quality of the signal gets even worse if a lot of hurdles are between those between sender and receiver, whether it's a concrete or brick wall, steel, also a wooden wall. Also glass is bad for internet connection. So the more obstacles in the way, the worse the internet connection. And the second issue is the frequency. So the frequency of the signal can be higher or lower. We have 5 gigahertz signals and, for example, 2.5 gigahertz signals. 5 gigahertz signals transport larger amount of information. However, disadvantage is, in case of a wall, of an obstacle, the signal vanishes quicker. So if you have internet connection problems, then better using lower frequencies, for example, 2.5. And lower frequencies transport less amount of information. However, for us, for the inverter, more than enough. So 5 gigahertz signals might be a must for, I don't know, streaming, gaming, those kind of things. For us, lower frequency is totally okay. So if you have internet problems, this is what you can do. You can adjust the antenna on the router, also rotate, change the orientation of the router, maybe also the location. Sometimes it helps that the antenna is just moved slightly a little bit, and the signal is then going around a wall or whatever is in the way, and the signal, the quality of the signal improves drastically. So probably before doing larger measures, just play around a bit with the router, and maybe you get already a sufficient result. If that doesn't help, then probably you want to extend the network. There are two possibilities, either a mesh network or a repeater. A repeater is, as the name says, just a repeater of the signal. So receives the Wi-Fi signal and repeats this signal, shouts it even louder from its location to the next one. With repeater systems, you will get a new SSID, so a new network name, and also a new password. And then with the end product, so let's say the inverter, you have to set to which repeater or which Wi-Fi router the inverter should be connected to. A mesh system is similar because it also transports a Wi-Fi signal that comes from a router, but in that regard, a bit different to the repeater. It doesn't create a new SSID, so it doesn't create a new network name, and it also doesn't create or doesn't need a new password. So within a mesh system, the signal just gets amplified, and the inverter or the end product takes the mesh router or the Wi-Fi router it gets the best signal from. So automatically, you do not have to choose. What we recommend in case of internet problems is to use a power line adapter. Power line adapters use the electricity cables to transport the Wi-Fi signal. So usually there are two devices, each is connected to a power socket. First device is connected to the Wi-Fi router. Best if you take a cable for this connection, and then the Wi-Fi signal is transported to this power socket device. Signal is then transported via the electricity cable and then going to an end device. This end device is again plugged into a power socket, and from this end device you can go again by cable to the router, for example. So those are power line adapters, and usually this option works best. If you want to change the Wi-Fi router, you can do that at any time. Usually then password and SSID changes, and hence each device that was connected to the old router then has to be connected to the new one. And within the inverter, for example, Also, you have to set the new password and the new SSID. Basically, this process is not so complicated. I will not go into that because there is a how-to video. Please just visit our YouTube channel, and there you find a how-to video what to do if you change the Wi-Fi router. Tony will also share the link with you in the chat. So please feel free also to click on this link or copy it. And last but not least, what do you need to do if you're changing from Wi-Fi to LAN signal? As I said, a cable is always to prefer. And if you have the opportunity, then please connect your inverter with LAN cable and not via Wi-Fi. First of all, you have obviously to connect the cable to the pilot of the inverter. Very important, there are two interfaces, LAN 1 and LAN 2. Only LAN 1 is working, LAN 2 is for internal purposes. So please always connect the cable to LAN port 1 and not to LAN port 2. And secondly, as with every time you're working with Fronius, please use Cat5 cable. So they need to be shielded twisted pairs. And this is also important for having a good signal. Once you have done that, please connect to the inverter, go to communication and to network, and then you find the options you can take. So connecting it by Ethernet, WLAN, Wi-Fi, or by the access point. Then click on the first option, Ethernet. Then you will get to this mask, and you can choose between automatic and static. I see this slide here is the screenshot is in German, but I'm sure you will understand it. So it's automatic and static is the second option. You can leave it at automatic. This means that the IP address, so to say, this is the name of the inverter in the network, and the IP address is given the inverter new every time the Wi-Fi router is starting. So if it loses power and starting again, then the inverter gets a different IP address. Totally fine. In some cases, it makes sense to enter a static IP address. So this means that the IP address stays the same with the inverter at any time. This can be useful, for example, if you have a heat pump running or any other system that is connected to the inverter, then you can tell the heat pump you always find at this address the inverter. It also contributes to a stable connection. And secondly, if it has a fixed IP address, then you can enter this IP address at any time in the browser and connect to the inverter. So you don't need to open the access point, you just need to be connected to the same network. Might be useful for you and also for the customer, probably especially for the customer, because they then don't need to run, let's say, into the garage, open the access point, but they can stay in the living room, be in the same network and just connect to it. And if you're giving this static IP address, then you click on static and you enter it here. I marked it in yellow. So you enter here the new IP address, and that's it. We are getting to an end of this webinar. I hope it was useful for you. As always, you will get sent the recording in the next days. If you want more information, then please visit our homepage at any time. There you find the possibility to register for other webinars, also for online trainings, and also for face-to-face trainings here in Austria. Also, if you need further information at any time, please visit our YouTube channel. There you find the already mentioned how-to videos. Also, you find already presented webinars and many other useful videos regarding our products. Please enjoy your weekend. Thank you for watching, and I'm looking forward to welcoming you the next time. Bye-bye.